You can imagine how hard it must be for the Kerbals to secure funding for any of their projects because, well, for one thing there's no people on Kerbin, so getting money from them is kind of difficult, and also because Kerbal inventions aren't particularly safe the majority of the time. And this is kind of mirrored in reality that space programs have a hard time finding cash, but it's not necessarily because there aren't enough people on Earth to fund it, and it's not even that space rockets have a terrible safety record. It's more the fact that people who could invest don't really see that much of a future in space at the moment. But there is one thing there is one industry which there will always be a future for, and that's tourism. Now, space tourism is something that's kind of been growing recently in reality. There's been, every so often, there's a few more articles come on about it, about space programs building their own, tourist shuttles to go into orbit for brief periods of time. But in the Kerbal universe, things have got much more advanced past that stage. I mean, getting into orbit's kind of easy, to be honest, and tourists have already seen plenty of the images that the astronauts bring back, seeing as there's no people on Kerbin, and the only ones that are on Kerbin are already astronauts themselves. So they've already been into space. They're not going to pay for tourism to just go into space again. But they might pay to go somewhere where they haven't necessarily been before, somewhere quite interesting, somewhere like the Jool System. Now, Jool is a gas giant, and it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moons, which is a lot of places to explore. Now, what if a company were to send a space station, or build a space station in Jool orbit? And then from there they were maybe gonna launch and create a base on Laythe, which has actually got breathable atmosphere and jet engines can work on it and boats can go on the sea. And then from there maybe that could be a major tourist attraction, surely. A different Kerbin, a new Kerbin that has been uncontaminated by a space program until now. And then of course there's Val, which is really icy planets that, haven't really looked at certainly in my space program I haven't really looked at it. Tylo is incredibly hard, definitely a difficult challenge, something that will stretch, or more accurately compress, Kerbals because of its massive gravity. And then there's the outside ones like Bop, which has got the famous Space Kraken on it, and Pol, which, well, no one really cares about Pol. But you can see what I'm talking about. There's so much opportunity in the Jool System that I haven't really explored, and there's so much opportunity for tourism. Now, if we were to make a space program in that kind of vein, the idea that we're going to be sending tourists to this place, it makes it much more interesting than just, we're going to make bases on these different moons. Because for tourists, you've got to try and cater to the pickiness that they're naturally going to have. Like, you can't expect them to get up and climb their way up a ladder and go into a rocket. No, they're going to want a luxury plane, a single stage to orbit, or even a single stage to a gas giant. Something very comfortable for them, with as minimal switching around as possible, and a few refuel in orbit, and then maybe we'll strap on some nuclear engines and send them out there. And they're not going to want to be in microgravity the entire time because it gets kind of annoying and, all that muscle degradation nonsense. So how about we give them artificial gravity on the way there? How about, we put them inside a ring or inside 2 compartments that, go around each other? You could definitely set up some interesting circumstances along the idea of tourism. So that, after a very long introduction, is what this series is. Welcome to the Jool System, the system in which we're taking people to the Jool System. And we're going to try and set up as much of a space program and do different things in it as possible, which I've already kind of gone over. But it's going to be so much more interesting than a moon base. Come on, for one thing, it's got colour. Jool is green, Laythe is blue, Val is kind of a lighter blue, Tylo's beigey kind of colour, and admittedly Bop and Pol are just kind of brown. But actually Pol's a bit yellow. But yeah, and it's like there's oceans on Laythe that we can drive boats on. We can actually send boats into space and land them on it. It's going to be so much fun. I don't know why I haven't done this before. At the end of the Moonbase series, I kind of asked for suggestions on what I should do for the next series, and most of them were like, oh, build a solar space station, or what was the other one? That's no Juno, or that's no Mars base. I thought these could all be put together in this one opportunity, and if I do say so myself, it's a pretty good idea. I quite like the idea of tourism. loading Kerbals into planes. It basically, the main thing is that it gives massive variety. We can have massive variety in what we're doing, rather than just building a utility and placing it on the surface of the moon and then going back and placing another one on the surface of the moon. We can switch around of what different projects we're working on, different aspects that make up the whole, and they're all very different from one another. So yeah, I think I've kind of sold it, hopefully. I'm hoping some of you are getting excited about the potentialities of this. But what you will notice is that I'm building this myself. Now, the ISSS, the International Subscriber Space Station, which was the precursor to the moon base, and the moon base itself, were both viewer-submitted utilities, which made it a bit difficult for me, trying to narrow down the good designs into the good designs that were also light enough for me to take there, and also their centre of thrust was above their centre of mass, so that it would actually be flyable. I'm not saying I resent it. It was really good, actually. Kind of keep my wits about me using craft that I wasn't familiar with. But I think it's time I started building my own inventions on these videos, because it's been a while. It's been a while. Artificial Gravity is basically the only series, and it's kind of a disjointed series of that, in which I built my own creations. Test Pilot, I test other people's ships. That's No Moon, I use other people's utilities. And I'm not going to say, oh, it's because this one guy said this one thing. But I think Damien Rains said on the charity live stream, now we see why you don't build your own things, Harv. And that really hurt. That was a knock to my self-confidence and my ego, basically. So yeah, series, I'm going to build it myself. I'm going to give you guys a break from making utilities for me. And I guess I should probably commentate what's actually going on. So this is the Advanced Probe Delivery, using the Spacia launch stage, which I've developed quite a while ago. And we're actually going to be using the SLS quite a lot. If you don't know, the SLS is something that NASA are working on. It's the Space Launch System. I thought the Kerbal equivalent was quite funny. Spacia launch stage. But yeah, what we want to do first, going to an unknown, unconquered system, is send a probe there to have a look at things. And you may be noticing, hang on, this is a launch stage. Where's the transfer stage? There isn't any. If we make something that's light enough, I'm fairly confident that my launch stage can actually take it all the way to Jool, which seems like a long way, but you know, this is fairly light and it should be up for the job, basically. So yeah, just this kind of little probe being strapped on top of this kind of big rocket, and hopefully it'll work. So I'm going to just think out loud now, because my intention for this particular first episode was more to sell the idea rather than to actually commentate the video, and as a result I've given myself 20 minutes of not an awful lot to talk about. Because in the video, this is sped up to 2x speed, and it's the footage, the 40 minutes it took me to do this, to do the actual mission, to build everything and to fly out to Jool and to put it into an orbit around it. So there we go, built. Going to put it on the pad now and time warp to get to a Jool encounter. So I'll be commentating the video and more or less be thinking out loud about ideas for the series. I've said a few times I want a boat. At least one boat. I was thinking we could have 2 bases on Laythe, seeing as it's, you know, what's the word? Habitually? No, habit. That would be habit. You can live on Jool, on Laythe. God, sometimes I really can't talk. On Laythe, it's quite interesting. There's an oxygen atmosphere, which means not only can we have boats because of the sea, but we can also have planes because of the oxygen enriched atmosphere. So there we go, there's the launch. So yeah, I was thinking we have 2 or 3 bases on Laythe. They don't have to be big things. They're certainly not going to be anywhere near the scale of That's No Moon base was. Just modest little things, maybe a beacon and a living quarters. You know, just some kind of marker. And perhaps maybe 3 utilities and make them up, right? Fuel reserve, yeah, fuel reserve, a beacon, and a habitation module, a tourist resort, right? Which is really not going to be a resort, it's going to be one building, but you know, we'll see. Maybe we can actually make some big things. Hey, we could make like proper We could make some proper tourist resorts, couldn't we? Oh, there could be so much good stuff with that. See, there's so many things we could do. 3 bases on Laythe, and we could have like a ferry system going from one base to the other, and planes going from one base to another, and then we could have, well, we can probably have boats and planes going from all 3 to all other 3, if we can land on some good islands, some good flat islands for a runway. So yeah, that's going to be quite an interesting variety of things to do, because testing boats on Kerbal, obviously, and then we'll actually, because it's closer to home, it'll be easier to test things there, and then we just need to develop a system for actually getting them to the to Laythe. Now, I also mentioned about a single stage to orbit passenger jet. That would be cool. Excuse me. Yeah, a shuttle kind of idea, but horizontal takeoff and landing rather than vertical takeoff and horizontal landing. Because I think a lot of people, especially in the media group, KSP YouTubers have been, and streamers, have been working on shuttles recently. Because you can actually make hangar bay doors using the reaction wheels just to open and close them, so you don't have to use, you know, jets or anything. And as long as you put them inside a construction, you can keep them from floating away when you're not time warping, and then you can dock them back on. So it's actually, you can actually make proper shuttles now with hangar bay doors stock. And no, I'm not going to be using any mods, completely stock again. Not ready to go onto mods yet. Will do in the future. Mods are something I want to explore because there's, again, so much potential there. I've done 2 years of KSP entirely stock. Think of all what I could do with mods, and the game is still being updated, meaning, you know, there's so much more stock coming, and career mode hopefully soon. But oh yeah, something in the video here. Look at the video, in case you weren't. I'm not going to assume everyone has. Basically, I think I burnt into an orbit, but I wanted my my side-mounted tanks, because you'll notice we've got basically full fuel. I've used the outside pairs to get us into this orbit, but I didn't want to put the last final pair into an orbit, because then it would just stay there and be space debris. So I wanted to try and cancel it quickly, lose a bit of fuel, but make sure that those rockets went down into the planet and crashed and burned. But they didn't, slightly, and actually during that, I forgot to raise the periapsis after I dropped them, and we actually went into the atmosphere, so I had to point upwards and try and get out of it. It was a little thing, and I missed the opportunity to commentate it properly, but I just wanted to say that in case you were wondering what I was going on about, or what the video was doing. And that pair of tanks are actually going to come back and haunt us in the next episode, I believe. Hopefully I'll remember to point that out. But yeah, what was I talking about? Single stage to orbit. You can make shuttles with hangar bay doors, and we wouldn't need a massive hangar bay, because obviously the bigger empty space you have, the harder it is to make a plane that's actually single stage to orbit. But if we had a little passenger compartment hangar bay, and we could have some command seats so that Kerbals could walk, you know, get out of their limos, and they could walk onto the runway and go up some steps into the plane. We could even make a proper airport corridor thing, couldn't we? So they don't have to see the outside of the plane, they can just walk in and be inside. And then they get in the chair, and then you close the hangar bay door over them, and then we'd go into orbit. And I also mentioned about strapping on nuclear engines. Either we'd have to transfer them, we could make a proper airport in space, again with a corridor. We could dock onto it and they'd get out and walk through a pressurized, obviously not actually pressurized because this is the Kerbal Space Program, but they could walk through a pseudo pressurized corridor straight into a kind of, you know, there could be a tourist resort in orbit as well for those who aren't going on to Jool, and then from there they could take the shuttle, or a different type of shuttle, interplanetary shuttle, up to Jool. And we'd probably have artificial gravity on some of the versions of that. First off, probably would just be normal, but then as we establish a base and space station over there, I definitely want to include artificial gravity, because there's so much more to explore. I've done 4 videos on it, in which I've made rings, I've made space stations with rotating rings, but I haven't made actual moving interplanetary vessels with a rotating ring, and there's some ideas on how we can do that and make it a bit better than I did with the space station. But yeah, some shuttle ideas there. So we've got boats, we've got planes, we've got bases and shuttles. What else could we do? I mean, there's specific resorts like the Kraken on BOP. There is the Dead Space Kraken we can go visit and have a reserve around it. Tourism. Tourism resorts. I don't know. I mean, that's quite a lot to get started. Thinking about it, we have a space station in orbit we have to build. We have to, and design everything, of course. Build that space station in Kerbal orbit. Build a space station in Jool orbit, which is what we're kind of working on in this first episode. We need to build a base, or at least more than one base, on each of the bodies. Tylo will be difficult because it's got such strong gravity. Getting off it is a pain, to say the least. I haven't actually gone to Tylo yet. See, 2 years of KSP stock, and I haven't even gone to all the bodies. I've gone to Moho, but not legitimately. The actual bodies I've gone to legitimately and landed on, and I'll talk about coming off later. I've gone to Kerbin, to the Moon, to Minmus, to Juna, to Eve, to Elu, to Drez, to Laythe, to Val, to Bop, and to to Juna's moon, which is Ike, and to Eve's moon, which is Gilly, I think. Yeah, I've gone to all them and I've come off them successfully, all but Eve, I believe. Is that right? Yeah. And then I've also been to Moho just to have a look at the Mohole, which is something I want to do a video on at some point. I had some good ideas for that. If you don't know what it is, don't find out, because I want to be the one to break it to you. It's amazing. You're obviously going to go search it now. I shouldn't talk about it. Moho, I went there illegitimately using infinite fuel, just because someone told me about it and I wanted to go have a look quickly. And yeah, I've been to the Sun. Didn't come back from that one, obviously. But yeah, I'm just kind of talking, aren't I? Not really commentating the video. We're in Jool encounter. Look at that. What do you know? We're in the system. Now, I've already recorded the next episode, and we don't do anything too interesting in terms of what I was planning just then. We just send some fuel to Jool. That's what we're going to do in the next video. Fuel to Jool. But at the end of it, I kind of facepalmed because I haven't been using aerobraking or lithobraking. I think, yeah, lithobraking is when you get into capture, aerobraking is just to slow down, right? Something like that. Yeah. But yeah, lithobraking, I haven't, because Jool is essentially all atmosphere. You can lose so much delta V, or I suppose gain delta V by not having to use your fuel to do it, to slow down from a interplanetary trajectory to a captured orbit. And I haven't been doing this. I just didn't think. In this first episode, I didn't think whatsoever about it. And then at the end of the second episode of the next one, I just like slammed my head down on the desk thinking, oh, that didn't need to have happened. So yeah, in the future we will be lithobraking. Oh, that'll be interesting for the tourists, won't it? I wonder, we should probably run an airline. We could have vacuum, is it Ryan Vacuum, couldn't we? Or Vacuum Berlin. But yeah, we should run an airline that doesn't actually lithobrake, because I'm sure there are some tourists with a nervous disposition that don't want to be thrown in a cascade fireball mess into a green planet. I mean, if they're Kerbals, then they should love that. But, you know, just in case. So yeah, I can't believe I forgot to lithobrake. But we will be doing that. And yeah, that's oh, it's alright, I don't have long left to commentate. Oh, whew, thank goodness. Because I've run out of things to say. We've got into orbit around Jool, or we are getting into orbit around Jool, wasting all this fuel we have, because the idea was that I'd actually have this probe here, but the tank, this stage of the launch stage, this is still the launch stage thing, as I said, the idea was to have some fuel left over that we can actually use in the future in case we need more fuel in orbit after deorbiting into or getting out of that trajectory and litho braking and whatnot. But unfortunately, due to the lack of litho braking, I misjudged how much fuel was actually required to leave some over, and that is a 5 million apoapsis and periapsis, and we're almost out of fuel. We've got 10, is that litres? 10 litres of oxidizer, of oxygen left. Whew. Yeah, so not a lot of fuel left, so that's why in the next episode we're going to have to send some fuel over there, and that is the next thing to do. Now what I've done is, I've obviously ejected the probe, because, you know, it's a probe, it's supposed to orbit by itself. And I kind of get confused in the next episode, and I kind of bring it back, and in doing so kind of use all its fuel. But it is quite a cool probe. It's got lots of sciencey stuff on it, which is literally the technical term that the Kerbals use to describe the probe. It's a big thing with sciencey stuff on it. And yeah, we'll also have to have a network of satellites as well. That's another thing. A network of satellites. Yeah. See, there's so many things to do in this episode, in this series. The Jool System. And I hope you all do like it, because I'm certainly looking forward to it. I don't know how much other content is going to be posted on the channel in the time being, but yeah, I'll find some other stuff to post, and there's always going to be StarMade, of course. And yeah, that's it. Final things I've got to say. My channel artwork, I haven't credited him yet, but I have actually just put on text onto the banner. My channel recently got a new banner, and it was made by an amazing artist called Age on PC. That is also his YouTube channel, so, you know, shout out to him and whatnot, and thank you very much, Age, for making that for me. And finally, of course, follow me on Twitter. I've got people saying, lol, I've got more followers than you, and yet I'm smaller, so just for my ego. And also, of course, if you want to get any updates on when I'm doing live streams, because I am going to be doing live streams, I do like live streaming, and when I'm going to be doing live streamings, when I'm going to be, you know, uploading videos and sneak peeks and whatnot, will probably all be announced on Twitter. So follow me at HOCgamer, and if you don't want to, don't. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked the idea of this series, and you still do, not past tense, you still like the idea of the series, please do like the video to let me know. And I shall see you all next time.